Welcome everybody to Letter Now, a podcast where we nurture the hand lettering masters of tomorrow, today. My name is Martina Flor. I'm a lettering artist, author, educator, and the host of this show. And today I have an amazing guest to talk about income streams for artists. How do you find an idea for an additional income stream? How do you promote it? How do you diversify it without burning out? How do you get started and find the right people to make it happen? And to discuss all of this, I have hand lettering artist Ian Barnard with me. Ian has a passion for inspiring, entertaining, and helping people to get better at their lettering skills through videos on his Instagram and YouTube channels, and also creating and selling digital lettering brushes for the iPad. He's also the co-host of a popular creative podcast called The Honest Designers Show. So hi, Ian. So happy to have you on my podcast today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. Looking forward to this session.
Amazing. And I will add Ian's website and social media handles on the show notes so that you can get to know his work if you don't know it yet. So Ian, I invited you to discuss today's topic because you as a lettering artist, you have built other income streams. You run your own YouTube channel. You run your own shop of digital products, iPad brushes, fonts, and other tools. And what is interesting is that it's all the things that you have built are built around your expertise and your art, which is hand lettering, and it's very coherent in, with the work you do. So the tools you create are the tools you use yourself to create your art, and you show others how to do that and how to use those tools while also sharing how you create your own creative work. So we will speak about all the different aspects of creating income streams today. I want to hear about your experiences as we go down the questions of our listeners today. But I want to show you, we received so many questions from listeners that we will probably make another extra show about income streams because we won't be able to cover everything today.
Okay.
But first, I want to share with you a poll that I did on my Instagram account. I asked my followers if they had more than one income stream, and 32% said yes, while 67% said no. I assume that many of my followers are not necessarily freelancers or business owners, but definitely I feel that these numbers makes me think that diversifying income is not necessarily the rule for everyone. Right? And I personally built my revenue as an artist and business owner on different income streams. And I feel that gives me certain possibilities that other businesses that don't have these income streams may not have. And I want to kick off the conversation by asking you why you decided to build several income streams and how that impacted your business and your work as a creative.
So it wasn't something I was sort of set out to do. Some people have a real goal. They want to have a side income or whatever that may be. I was just a struggling graphic designer who'd just gone freelance. I wasn't doing lettering at the time. I was just getting into lettering at the time. So for me, it was just a hobby that sort of started just as something to get off the computer, really. But I wanted something that wasn't the pressure of having to get clients every month, because I was only earning sort of like really basic wage, and I was just getting any local jobs that were going in. So money wasn't great. So I wanted a way of getting some income that wasn't tied into client work. And so it all started when I sort of created some, for me, it all began when I created some like really basic like icons and started selling on some of those stock sites that you see, like Shutterstock or Getty Images and stuff like that. So that was like my intro into it. And when they say when you first earn that first dollar, it really transforms your life. You've made this money that wasn't based on people paying you for your service. They were paying you for something you created. And so that it just felt really good. And it wasn't much for the first 6 months. It was only like $100 to $200. So it wasn't loads, but it was nice that there was, I didn't have to invoice for that, and I didn't have to, sort of haggle a price for that. That was something that was coming in. And it's something I could do off my own back. I could spend some time just doodling and create something, and then I could sell it. So that's where it started. And then I just really liked having that side income there because there was no pressure on it. And so I sort of thought, oh, what else could I do? And then continued down that path of creating stuff and selling stuff. So that's where it sort of began.
That's interesting, because I feel that most of us who have several income streams or different income streams for our business or our creative business, I think we all started this way, right? Like there was no conscious decision of saying like, okay, I'm going to set up my business with several income streams, and one is going to be products, the other one is going to be like tutorials and whatever. Like it sort of developed naturally. And it's interesting to tell this experience to others, because perhaps for someone who is starting right now, this could be something that they set up from the beginning, right? Because as you said, I think this is a different feeling to understand that you can create something that, it's just out of pleasure, or something that you created for yourself, like an iPad brush that you might create for creating your own work, and suddenly you put it out there and other people can use it as well, and you get revenue from that, right? So there's some magic in this, where something that was useful or enjoyable for you is also very useful for others, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the products, because there's like selling your stuff, like the icons, though they're fine, few dollars here and there, but what leveled up my income streams was creating so finding a problem and providing a solution. And soon as like I hit on those kind of products, that's when it sort of, from jumping from making icons, I then made I was still doing sort of lettering part-time as just a hobby, but I was really into sort of vintage stuff and vintage type. And I started creating vintage logo templates so people other designers could buy them and fill in their own text and create some logos. They just didn't have those skills. But when I was regularly posting to Instagram with my lettering, I wanted to add, it was a time where textures were really sort of on trend, adding sort of stamp-like textures to my lettering. And because I was posting to Instagram and trying to fit that in with my work, I needed a way of creating these textures for the lettering like quickly so I could then post it. And so I created something in Photoshop that sort of took that, I could just paste it in and it applied effects to it every time I needed it. I could adjust them a bit and then post it. And then people kept asking me about it. And I thought, well, maybe if I package this up into something someone else can use, like you mentioned, someone else might find it useful. And overnight, that product transformed more than, over that month, and more than my freelance work brought in. And so I was like, that's it.
There's no way back.
Yeah. The next year, I just got rid of all my clients, in the graphic design. And it meant that I could focus on those products. And so the two things that went hand in hand were the products I was making and focusing my business around lettering. And the reason why I was able to become a full-time letterer was because this was like the foundation, the products were the foundation to being able to do that full-time. Because then I didn't have to rely on all my lettering work sustaining my income, in terms of getting work, because it was still, when I was doing it, it's still early. And so people were like, oh, custom lettering, clients didn't know that was a thing they could get done. And so I was getting jobs in, but it wasn't enough to support myself. And so having products being the main earner, it sort of took that pressure off. And also I was just enjoying it. I was enjoying the process of playing and seeing what I could create, seeing, if there's any problems, any frustrations that I was having, I'd see if other people were having those frustrations too. And then that would sort of mean that, that might work as a product. Not all of my products have done very well. There's some ones that totally failed, and that's fine, because it's just a part of the process I go through. But the more products I put out there, it means that, you know, like even ones I've created like 4 or 5 years ago are just trickling in, you know, every month, and it just sort of adds up to, you know, a sustainable income, really.
That's so interesting, because we will have a specific question about, you know, how to find that income stream, or how to find that product idea that suddenly like you transformed your business, or like really becomes something that you can rely on every month, you know, rely on that income every month. So we can go already through the questions of our listeners, so that we can listen to your stories while we answer to their questions. So we will start with voice messages. You can send us your voice message or your voice memos with questions and comments by simply going to martinaflor.com/voice message, or email your voice memo to podcast@martinaflor.com. Today, we have a question coming from Larissa in Brazil.
Hi, this is Larissa from Brazil, and I would like to know what was your biggest challenge to start showing what types of products you have when working in different streams, what to prioritize and how. Thank you.
Ian, I think this is a relevant question to start with, because when we speak about diversifying your income, of, you know, creating these diverse income streams, we need to be conscious of the fact that whatever you do in your business will imply some effort and work. So diversifying your income is not about doing thousand things at the same time, right? Because that will definitely spread you thin, and will also make it hard for you to optimize whatever you made, because it's not. Well, most of the things are not an overnight hit. Like, you need to put something out there and improve it and see how that responds and get that feedback, and then improve it again, and sort of create a prototype of something, and, you know, improve it throughout time, right? So when you create an income stream, it's very similar to the process of creating a product, or, you know, a certain thing, a certain object, right? You first create this first draft, this first idea, you put it out there, you test it, and you kind of improve it throughout time. And if you are doing too many things at the same time, you don't get to optimize that thing that you did, and perhaps it won't perform as good as it could perform if you will focus on one thing at a time, right? Or if you will dedicate the time it needs. So prioritizing, I think, is key. You can start by one idea and see how that works, and you learn from that, and then you readjust. But Ian, you have, as you said before, you have several digital products out there. Some of them were really successful, some of them were not. You also have your YouTube channel, and which is already, like, in itself a content product. And what would you say to Larissa, who is wondering what to prioritize, and when it, you know, what comes first when it comes to income streams?
I think, is that if you're starting with nothing? Is that
I believe so. I think that Larissa is wondering, like, you know, how can you if you have a set of products, or if you have a set of ideas, how can you, you know, put a focus on one, or how do you go about, like, studying your income streams without doing too much at the same time?
So for me, I was prioritizing the things that either I found more fun to do, because then that makes it quicker, the process to build upon. So, and if you can see some traction, so I do use social media a lot to find out whether to validate a product, really, and whether I should spend my time on it. It's like showing, maybe if I'm just starting on it, saying, you know, would anyone be interested in just doing a poll, and just seeing if there's any, or if you put, like, sometimes I'd use a product early in its creation in a post just to see if I get those questions about, like, oh, what brush you're using, or what's that typeface name, or, you know, you get to gauge what people are, and also just looking, like, a lot of my products have come from Pinterest. So I look on Pinterest, I find something that really resonates with me or is quite popular. You know, you get the popular pins popping up, and I think, okay, can I take the essence of that design and create something that someone can use who may struggle to get to that process, that finished design. So can I help them get to point A to point B with a product? And sometimes, you know, and so I will spend a bit of time looking at that. But then if I find it's taking too long or I'm not getting anywhere, then I have to pivot and try something else and then leave it, because it might be the case that something comes along another and it works into that product. But I suppose it's, I could easily do a million things at once, but I suppose I just have to have a look at that idea, spend a little bit of time on that idea, not too long, just to try and get any validation that it's going to go in the right way.
That's so important, because I mean, you know, having that first validation through like testing that yourself, it's super important, because it's like you don't invest that much time and effort into doing that product, and you can right away see whether you are excited about it, whether you think it's gonna work, and you, by doing it, you already kind of validate the idea, and you decide whether you go, you know, forward, like investing more time, or you just leave it, you drop it and you do some other thing, right?
Yeah. And also it I suppose when you're starting out, it's a case of trying to get some under your belt first. So getting stuff out there. And like you mentioned about, you know, putting something out there and then returning to it to, you know, maybe make it a little bit better. But for me, it's like, because I could spend a lot of time just procrastinating on a product and not getting it out there because it's not perfect, or, you know, it's not quite where. But sometimes it's about getting it out there and seeing what response you get, whether anyone comments. Because I think the great thing about having, I suppose in my case, digital products is that they can be edited and re-upload and people can download them. And so it's not like, here's a product, oh, it doesn't work, and that's it. Here's a product that I can actually go in and change if someone says anything, or if there's anything wrong, or it needs adding to it. So I think the experience of going through it means that when you come to the next one, you build upon that, whether that's creating better instructions on how to use it, or creating better preview graphics to advertise it, including more things. So, you know, my first products weren't as good as the current products I'm releasing, because I sort of looked at it and I thought, well, what else can I add, or what else will make it more helpful? So that's
so interesting, because it's not about like doing a product and sticking to it and trying to like make it better and like just producing that one product, but sometimes it's about like doing that first product and learning from that experience, and then putting that experience into the next product and learning from that experience, and like, you know, the loop goes from product to product and not within the product itself, right? So that's right. And that's so important as well, because as you said before, which really resonated with me, like it needs to be fun for you to do. And sometimes like reiterating on something that you did in the past is not so fun for yourself. You might have like new ideas that you want to execute. And if you force yourself to like reiterate on past products, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's done, you know, like, so, so that's super interesting. And we have another question coming from Milenka. So Larissa, I hope that this is answering your question about, you know, what to focus on, or how do you go about like studying your income streams? We will talk more about this as we go through the show, but I think some of the things that Ian said here, like kind of seeing what is fun for you to do, and as well for yourself, or for most of our listeners here who are artists or designers, your work will probably, or the way you do things, or the tools you create for yourself will probably give you hints on what can be useful for others. If you were struggling on creating a certain texture and you put a lot of effort into creating that texture for yourself, this might save you a lot of time for other people, the same way that Ian was like looking through Pinterest and trying to find ways of how can I create something that saves time for certain people or certain designers to get from A to B. So sometimes the answer is in your work, in the work you're doing, right? And how can you use that to provide a service or to solve a problem for other people, right?
Yeah.
So we have another question coming from Milenka.
In your experience, how long did it take for you to start having other incomes? Like, for example, if you have a book, how long did it take to get ready to start seeing results? That would be the question. How long does it take to start seeing results?
So I guess that it depends a lot on the income streams, right? And it really, like I would say that it's really, most of the times it's like a long game. So you also have to sort of create some sort of reputation of you creating those products, right? Like people come to you because you create a certain product, or come to you because you are good at teaching something, or come to you because they love your books. So I think depending to the product you create, you will have a faster return on what you're doing. And some income streams also will need more work or more time to develop through time, right? Personally, I have done different things throughout my career. And as I said, I haven't done them all at the same time. Nowadays, when I look back, there's a lot of things that I dropped throughout my career. Like I was doing products at some point, and now I'm not creating those anymore. So some of the things that I tested throughout my work as a designer were not necessarily things that I continued doing. And I would say that some of the things that I was doing in the beginning were tests, so that right now I can focus on the things that I feel work better for me financially, but also, bring me more joy. What you said before as well, what is fun for you to do. I think that when you create different income streams, it's important to put a focus on what is fun for you to do. Where do you find joy, and where do you feel that you're not burning out, that it comes easy for you, and that, it also works for you financially, right?
Yeah.
But coming back to Milenka's question, so I think that it depends really on the type of products you're putting out there and the type of content you're putting out there, and it will also depend on a lot of different things, right? Like the audience you have and how fast that can travel from one person to the other, right? How did that work for you, Ian, with your products and also with your content creation?
So part of making digital products is, selling whatever it may be. I don't have any books, but ebooks are something that you could just put down your knowledge in an ebook and sell that.
Yeah.
But obviously that is half the equation. The next thing is all the marketing that goes into making people aware of your products.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I was building an audience at the same time as making these things. Because I found that actually, as I was doing it, I could do like competitions where they could win my product. So I'd get them to, leave a comment and a follow, if they wanted to win this product, which then would generate more, a bigger audience, and more people to sell to the next time. If you provide value through any form of social media, enough people feel they trust you, and they're more likely to invest in your products if they see it demonstrated. So a lot what I do is make videos to go along with what I've made, explaining how to use it. So then not only do they get to know you, they get to know the product, and that then helps them to say, oh, this is actually going to work for me. And so adding all those things together, it's hard to take, this is how long it's going to take until you get a return on what time you've put in and the money you want to get out. But it's a case of, it's not like that quote where it's build it and they will come, because no one knows about your thing. So what you have to do is, once you make the product, that's not the end thing. It's then going, okay, how can I promote this, or how can I promote myself to then advertise my product? So, it might be the case that on your website you have an email sign up. That's something I've got into late. Email newsletters, getting people to subscribe to your email, so that when you release a product, you've got their captive email audience of emailing and saying, oh, I've got this new product, because you're on my email list, I'll give you 10-20% off the opening cost. And so you don't even have to have a social media following, as long as you've got some way of being able to contact people who like your work. And so on your website, you have something where you could give some stuff away for free in exchange for an email address. That's a great way of building up a customer base. And then just being regular with the products means that people will see those and want to buy them. And if you offer a discount, that's another incentive. So that's one way. And I came to that late. I wish I'd started out a lot earlier, because it's a great way, where with all the noise and the algorithm of social media, email is still something that that you own, rather than a company who chooses to show your work to other people. And like with YouTube, if people, that is a great platform, but the problem with YouTube, it does take a while to get to a place where you're earning a good income. And I'm still not there yet, and I've been on it for years and years and years. Maybe because I go through, like, I do a year of doing constant videos, and then I get burnt out, and then I have to have some time off, and then I do another year. But the ad revenue, because I'm in an art niche, is not the greatest. If I was in the finance niche, that would be great, and I get a lot of money probably. But because I'm in and not many companies want to advertise on lettering videos. That I have, last year I got sponsored quite a few times, and so I was earning like $400 per video. Not enough to warrant the time I spend making a video, but you can see where it's going if you kept up that consistency. But also through that, because YouTube is an evergreen platform in which the videos stay there and people search for them, whereas Instagram, it's sort of like, it goes like after a day, is that a few of my videos which have affiliate links in, so I get commission if they click on a link that's in it. So for instance, there's a screen protector for the iPad called Paperlike. I use that on mine. I really believe in the product. I've always had it on my iPads. And they have an affiliate scheme, so I get a certain amount of commission every time they sell one through my link. And I've done a review of it, saying this is what it is, what it does. And so every day, every other day, I get $5-10 from affiliates, of being affiliated with them. And it's the same with some font creation work software I've got, and it's all those things combined that can then produce a revenue stream that's sustainable. I think what it is if you looked at one of them, you think that's not very much money, but it's when you combine them all together that's when it makes a substantial income. And it's not like, oh, one client's paying me this X amount and that's the month's costs I need to get in to pay my bills. It's all these little drip feeding of stuff that comes in, and you're able to then live off that.
That's so good that you tell all this behind the scenes, because as you can see, like, an income stream can have a lot of little details. As you said, like in YouTube, you have the money you get through ads and the sponsorships and all these affiliate links, a lot of things that probably our listeners don't know about, but you get to learn about these things as you develop a YouTube channel, right? And as you said, it's about creating this myriad of products or things that complement each other, where not necessarily all of the things have or provide an income, right? So for instance, the YouTube channel is not necessarily an income stream for you, but it's a platform for you to create income, right? I think that the same happens to me with the books. Although they, of course, I get royalties from my books, they're not necessarily my biggest income stream, but they create or they help me get to more readers and to, you know, getting people know me for my teaching and for the things I do. And this really creates or helps me create some sort of authority in when it comes to teach lettering, right? And this is what I use also to promote my online classes. So it's all about like sort of doing what you do in different formats. Not necessarily all of them will be a revenue stream, but they will complement each other, right? And what I think that many of the listeners that are listening to the show might look at your following and might look at my following and will be a little bit like disappointed, like think, oh my God, this is really hard. It's really hard to get there, right? And I think that also some things you can use when you're just starting and your audience is not so big, because I think what was really important from what you were saying is this marketing aspect of creating an income stream. It's not only like creating the product or the content, but also finding ways to put that out there and getting people to know that. And I think you can also use other platforms that are out there, marketplaces. You mentioned in the beginning Shutterstock, which is already like a marketplace which has already a captive audience that you can use to get started, right? So in my case, when I started with my online classes or my online tutorials, I was using Skillshare, which already had a platform of customers. And through those first products, I developed into other products that became today like my own platform or my own online academy, right? So I think these are great places where you can test your products, you can test whatever you want to create, and you can use their audience to see yourselves, like see how that idea, how that income stream work for you, right?
And because that's like you say, it's a great thing to do. Because I used when I started to really have success, I was using a platform called Creative Market, and they would have a really good email that would go out on a Tuesday, and I would then focus all my energy to get the product out there before that deadline, so that if they happen to include it in the newsletter, then that would really bump the sales of my product up. And so I started having success without having a large audience, because I was utilizing the audiences, like you say, Creative Market, or I've only got one course out, and that's on Skillshare, but it uses the customer base of Skillshare rather than of my audience to get people in. And so you can sort of jump on the back of all these other things. So I have fonts on a lot of foundries like Font Spring or My Fonts and stuff like that, because they have a large audience and they have a large people go there to get the stuff. So if your stuff's on there, then they do all the promotion, and you can just put the stuff up there and hopefully get some return from putting it out there.
Absolutely. So for you listening that are thinking like, oh, how could I get my products out there or my content out there or my online classes out there? You don't need to do it alone. You can also collaborate with other people who have bigger audiences, or you can also look for platforms that will make it easier for you to sort of promote your content and the things you're creating, right? So let's move on to our next segment, Ian, our inspirational quote time. Ian, we all love quotes, especially lettering artists, because we can draw them. And in this section, we do our best to answer questions from our listeners with a quote. We later put these quotes on our show notes so that listeners can share them on social media. The truth, Ian, is that we just chat around like about the topic, and then we see if we can put a quote together. I have a couple already prepared because I went through the questions myself, but don't worry, we will make you sound good. If you don't come up with a quote, we will just put something together for you. So here's the first question from Jojo coming from Instagram. My biggest challenge is promoting different businesses. I appear to be all over the place. How can I deal with this? So, Jojo, I understand your concern because I feel that most of us as artists, we want to continue having an identity, and by having different streams, you might feel that you're having like different profiles, like you start a shop or a profile on Shutterstock, and then you start, a YouTube channel with another identity or another other visuals, right? So you are a product for your customer, you are a teacher for your students, and you're an expert for your clients, right? So you end up not knowing who you are, right? And I have a quote that I always say to my coachees. I coach lettering artists and illustrators, and I always say this when it comes to income streams: do what you do best in all shapes and colors. And this means that creating income streams is not about doing client work and also selling cakes in the park and additionally selling vintage furniture on eBay. It's rather it's about expanding your expertise into different formats. It's using your skills and amplifying them through income streams. So what we are talking about here is not about creating different businesses, because that implies a lot of other things. You have to have multiple websites, you have to have multiple social media accounts and multiple email addresses and so on, right? So what you want to do when it comes to creating income streams is to get better at what you do through different things, right? And using your identity and your profile to offer all the things you can do, right? So in my case, I'm a lettering artist and I do work for clients, but I also teach and I also write my books, and I also at some point was creating products and putting them out there, right? So all of these things are built around my expertise and around the things that I find fun doing, right? What you said in the beginning, Ian, which is like, it's all things that interest me first in a way, right? And things that, bring me joy, and I find that it can also, add value to other people, right? So what would you say to Jojo that is afraid that the own identity may be diluting into these different businesses or products?
That's tricky, because I could see why that would come about if you were everywhere. And I suppose I was a bit everywhere for a while until I focused down. I like to use the analogy of like the hourglass. It starts off really wide at the top and then goes really narrow and then really wide. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes as you associate this with like, I was like, I suppose I didn't know who I was when I was doing graphic design, because I was doing everything and I was doing so many bits and bobs. And then I like niched down into one thing, which was the lettering, and I suppose the digital products. And then that opened up to a whole load of other things. And I suppose for me, it was a case of removing some bits to find out, to clear the way so I could find out what I really loved. And then it opened up to being everything, doing a bit of everything. And I suppose with your identity, I suppose it can get a bit fragmented when you're doing so many things. And I suppose sometimes it's good to sort of have a break and establish what you love doing, what brings you joy, like you say, what you're good at, and also what the market needs. And I think it's that intersection of all those three things that is where you're going to find the sort of sweet spot of getting the income and making stuff that you love doing. And yeah,
that's so important. Like, I think that's these three like points that you just pointed out, like things like finding something that you love, or like focusing on something that you love doing, that you have joy, that you're also good at, and that the market needs. Because I think this last one, if no one really wants it, then you lose that motivation of like, hey, this is great, I'm really good at it. Like you lose that validation, right? So in a way, you need all these three. Not all of them are all the time in balance, right? Sometimes you perhaps are doing a product that the market really needs, but you don't necessarily are enjoying doing it so much as other products that you enjoy doing, but perhaps the market doesn't really need them, but you still would do it. Yeah. So, but I think it's great to have all those as a something to have in your income stream. So the second question is coming from Rob on Instagram. So I'm having trouble finding the right idea. Any hints to come up with possible income streams? So we were speaking about this before, and I actually got several questions similar to this one. I think this has to do with, I think many of us, when we think of starting a new income stream or we think of starting a project, we have this initial terror or this initial overwhelm that having too many possibilities or too many roads to explore, and not understanding upfront what will be successful, which one will be like the one and the big hit. So I have a quote for you, Rob. You don't know until you try. The best you can do is to stop the guesswork and set yourself in motion. The guesswork you are doing right now in your head is super exhausting. I know how that is, like wondering, like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Is this something people want? Is this something I want to do? So if you set yourself in motion, this is where you will move forward towards clarity, right? And you don't need to do a huge thing, as I said before. You can start with baby steps, trying your product idea with friends, or using, as you said before, Ian. This I think this is a really great idea to validate that with your audience, no matter how big your audience is. Like post that on Instagram or on Facebook and see how the people react to whatever you are creating. Ask them, get that initial feedback from them. So I always say, like, just think of the smallest step you can make and just do that small step and see how that works for you. But I want to give Rob a little bit I bet that many of the listeners and many of those that submitted one of these questions about how to start with that first income streams, I want to just them to have a bit of a takeaway regarding like what is the first thing they should do now to start creating that first income stream. What do you think we can provide them so that they can get started with that first idea?
So the first idea, what could they do? I think what the most exciting thing is to just set up a shop, because you can get a free one on like Gumroad, and there's other free shops that you can set up. And it might be the case that you sell something for $1, or you have one of those things where they can just choose the price. And it might be the case that you take something you created before. So not creating something new, but looking through all the stuff you created, it might be the case that you can create a product full of, you might like drawing leaves in your lettering or something. And so create a pack of, just those illustrations, that people can then take and use. And what you need to get is that first sale, because once you get that first sale, then you get this massive adrenaline rush, and then you are able to then create other things. And the thing is, when you start off, obviously you can't make a living from just a $1 product, but you learn so much from, what you can do is if someone buys it, then you can ask them what they thought and what they could feel like they can improve. And it's just that first interaction you have with a customer that can really drive on you pushing to create more products. And so it's just looking through, because the thing is, a lot of the time, products come out of things that you've already got, and things like shortcuts you might take, or skills that you've got that someone else hasn't. So I haven't really got a skill for drawing innate flowers, intricate flowers. So I would probably go and buy some, a pack of flowers or some brushes that were flowers. But if you're really good at that, then someone else is not going to be good at that, and they're going to want something like that. So, have a look through your work, see what crops up repeatedly, and maybe turn that into a product. If it's creating some brushes, then the first step might be going away and having a look on, Skillshare or YouTube of how to make some brushes, so that you've then learned a skill. Because a lot of the time, my products, I've had to go away and learn a skill to be able to make that product. I've utilized lots of different courses because I had to find out how something worked in Photoshop, how something worked in Procreate, and then I was able then to turn it into a product. So, if you say, I don't know how to make Procreate brushes, then go away and learn them. And also is that there is Procreate brushes is quite saturated. There's a lot of people making them. Maybe have a look for one of the other applications that people use and make stuff for that, or learn how to use that program. So sometimes the first step might be learning rather than actually creating, and seeing, learning a skill, so then you can sell that as a product or some sort of service. Because also what you do is you learn all these things, and then you can create a course, or you can create an ebook explaining, you could go through the process of making products and then explain it in an ebook once you've learned how to do it. So I think what you need to do is not worry about like, I've got nothing, there's blank sheet of paper, and look at the things you've already got and see, or look at your own process and see if there's anything within your process that can help, or ask people what they're struggling with, which is the reason why like two of my best products, which I've done in collaboration with Stefan Kuhns, is Letter and Grid Builder, is because we asked the audience, what are you struggling with? And two of the main things was composition and consistent letters. And so that then gave us the idea of, well, what could we create to help people with that? And so, so go away and learn some things, go away, look at your process. And just have a think about those elements.
And I will add two things that you mentioned, which is ask your audience, and also look around for a niche, or try to identify a niche. What you said before, like perhaps there's a lot of iPad brushes, and that feels already like overwhelming, and like you feel that it won't make a difference, and perhaps it won't. So perhaps you find a niche or another app where the people don't have so many tools, as for instance Procreate, and then you go create something for that specific audience, right? So I think these are great hints. And before we move on to the Better Now segment, we apparently have a surprise coming from Stefan.
Stefan Kuntz here, and I don't have a question actually. Just wanted to let Ian know that I'm such a huge fan. I love working with him, and I'm so glad that we're partnering up on products together. So couldn't ask for anyone best. Anyway, sorry to interrupt your podcast. Thank you so much.
So I wasn't this was not planned, actually. Ian, you were just mentioning Stefan, and Stefan left a message just before we started the podcast. So this was beautiful encounter of different things. So lastly, we are moving on to our Better Now segment, where we share something we are happy about or something that has impacted our lives lately. So Ian, what would you like to share that is currently present for you, a product you just released, something that is you're happy about?
I released it a few months ago, but I had a pack called like the Freestyler Pack, which took me like about a year to put together, because I sort of go through stages of liking different styles of lettering, and one of them was like this sort of combination of different styles in one piece, and it's still working, which is quite hard to get right, and that's probably why it took me a year to create this. In that sort of a slightly graffiti doodly style, and I was determined to make a pack of brushes, because not only mainly because I wanted it for myself, but to make it easier, but also I knew that if I could get that, then I know that other people would probably be helpful. And also to make it sort of fun. It's quite a sort of fun. And so, I managed to work it out and then Procreate updated to allow for dual brushes, which really helped things. And then I was able to create this pack and then gave some extra things in it and made some little tutorials that came with it. And I was just really happy with that. And I was really happy with the response that people gave me, because it was exactly what I was sort of hoping it would be, sort of people enjoy using it and, being able to, sort of combine different styles of work together. That was something in the sort of immediate that's really worked well.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to see all these Ian Barnards out there made with your brushes, right? But I'm gonna add that to our show notes so that listeners can find it. Personally, I want to share that I started working on a new book, which is something that makes me super happy. Today I finished drafting like the index of the book. I have already written a couple of stuff, and I'm celebrating this because I've been speaking about my books. I'm showing this up on YouTube right now, but I wrote this book some years ago, and it was a real hit. It was it was translated into 6 languages, and it really helped a lot of lettering artists and designers to understand lettering better or improve their process. And I'm really happy about this book. But I have to say that after that big bestseller, it was hard to create anything else. It was every time I was trying to write a new book, or I actually did write another book, which is this one I'm showing up on Instagram. The first one, on YouTube. The first one I showed is The Golden Secrets of Lettering, and this one is The Big Leap. And so every time I start a new project, when it comes to writing, I'm always coming back to is it going to be as good as The Golden Secrets of Lettering? And, that big success sort of holds me back sometimes. And I have this radio on my head. And I'm sure that, this new book that I'm writing right now is going to be a bestseller. So I'm really happy about that one. Even if it's not.
Tricky. It's tricky to come off if something does prove to be successful. It's hard then to say, well, is this going to be? And the problem is that about 9 times out of 10 it probably won't. It's being okay with that, because otherwise you won't release anything. Because I know musicians must find it. If they get a song that's just everywhere and they have to follow it up, it's a struggle. Whereas actually, if it just goes along steady, which a lot of having this sort of side income and passive income is easier to control on the sort of mental clarity of it. Because it's really hard when it does well, and then you've got to produce something else that actually it's all about having a quantity of these maybe products or whatever it is. Because all I found out is especially with posts on Instagram or videos on YouTube, you don't get to decide what's popular. And you have to be okay with that. It's out of your control. You could, I could spend ages, like I said, a year on a product and it might not do very well at all, but it's being okay with that. Because I remember that I spent I think it was my second font, and I decided to do a script font, and it was really loads of hard work, and I hadn't learned all the shortcuts to the kerning part, making the spacing work, and it took, it felt like it took forever. But it's now my best selling font out of all 16 that I have, and and if it wasn't for that, it was, if I hadn't have. But then after that, I had to come up with some more fonts. And so, the struggle came. And I think you just have to keep going and forget about anything that's successful and forget about anything that doesn't do so well. Because I've had one of my fonts has sold about 10 in the whole of its entirety. And I had to you have to come back from those sort of hilltop valley moments and be okay with like just keep churning out the work, which is what you want to do, rather than focus on whether it's going to be successful or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I feel that what you were saying about the script font, that not necessarily because it takes a lot of work, it will be super successful. So that's also not a like direct relationship. Sometimes something that you did very or comes really natural to you and you can make really quickly is super successful. And some things that take longer are not as successful as you expected. So there's no real formula to that. I think that what you said is really wise, that you have to try to keep your mind cold, in the sense of like that you don't expect to have the hit, and that you don't expect it to like also be totally unsuccessful, that you don't speak yourself into like, oh, this is not going to work out and therefore I'm not going to do it, but also don't expect that it's going to be like will be an overnight hit, because most of the things are not an overnight hit. And I think none of those will, be realistic and also keep you motivated throughout time, right? So it was great talking to you. This is the end of our show. And it was amazing that you share all these stories about income streams. And we will surely do another episode about this to answer all of the questions that all the listeners have sent, because it seems to be like a hot topic. So Ian, where can people find you?
If you just search Ian Barnard at any of the social media platforms, I'm there somewhere. Or ianbarnard.com for checking out some of my products I've spoken about in this episode. That's where my main shop is. So that's where you can find me. And weirdly enough, to illustrate the point of the fact that you don't know what's going to be successful, my most successful post on Instagram by quite a margin is a picture of an eye. So it's nothing like a picture of like a pupil. And it's nothing to do with lettering. And because I ran I was having a creative block, and I thought, let me do something that's not lettering, and I'll just post that. See, people go, well, what's this? But it blew up, and I'm like, well, what's going on here? This is not what I'm known for. And so you don't, it's, and I think what people need to do is, create, reevaluate, keep doing it, trying it, because at some point, something might pop up and resonate with people and be successful, but it's going through that motion, whether you're posting videos to YouTube, or your products to your shop, or your posts to Instagram. It's that consistency of keep going and getting better every time you post, not worrying about what other people are doing, and just keep going and keep building on, all those little income streams as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ian, for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So this is it. I will add all the, all the social media handles and websites of Ian on the show notes, so you can find him. You can find me, the host of this show, on social networks at Martina Flor on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you have a question or comments, go to martinaflor.com/podcast, where you can see previous episodes, find show notes, and send voice memos with your comments and questions. You can also watch these episodes on YouTube. Just go to martinaflor.com/YouTube to find them. You can, of course, listen to all our episodes on your favorite podcast platform. This is it for today. If you love this episode, subscribe to this podcast. And if you leave us a review, it will help others find us, and we will love you forever. Thank you all for listening, and see you in the next episode of Letter Now. Bye-bye.